My mother's hand landed on my shoulder just as the camera flashed and she whispered, "You're on your own now." Dad smiled at the crowd like it was all a joke. 10 minutes later, I discovered my tuition account frozen, my housing contract canceled, and an itemized child-rearing invoice for $68,400. Have you ever had your own family weaponize the law to crush you? Comment where you're listening and don't look away. I'm about to tell you exactly how the courtroom flipped the script. My name is Elena Brooks, and May 15th should have been the proudest day of my life. The morning sun broke through the clouds over Midland State University's quad in Riverton, Ohio, casting everything in that golden light that makes graduation photos look like destiny fulfilled. I'd just walked across that stage, Bachelor of Science in Nursing clutched in my hands, the Northview Medical Center offer letter burning a hole in my purse. 4 years of night shifts at Maple and Rye Deli, cramming for anatomy exams in the break room, surviving on instant ramen when the meal plan money mysteriously needed reallocation. All of it led to this moment. The crowd was dispersing from the football field where they'd set up the ceremony. Families clustered around their graduates, bouquets of supermarket roses and mylar balloons catching the breeze. My parents, Marla and Gordon Brooks, stood by the memorial fountain, my mother's practiced smile gleaming as bright as her freshly highlighted hair. One more by the university sign, Mom directed, phone already raised. For the Facebook announcement, I shifted my mortarboard, the tassel tickling my cheek. Dad stood rigid beside me, his hand heavy on my shoulder, not in that proud father way you see in movies, but possessive, like he was holding merchandise he was about to return. The camera clicked. "Perfect," Mom said, but her smile evaporated the second she lowered the phone. She stepped close enough that I could smell her lavender perfume mixing with the scent of fresh-cut grass. "We need to talk about your future." "Elena." "I know. The apartment viewing is tomorrow at 2. "There is no apartment." Dad's voice cut through the ambient celebration around us. A family nearby glanced over, then quickly away. "Your mother and I have been discussing this for months. You're 26 years old. It's time you learned to stand on your own feet." The words didn't compute at first. I actually laughed, that nervous kind that escapes when your brain refuses to process what it's hearing. "What are you talking about? The lease at Oakview Residences starts June 1st. You co-signed." "We've withdrawn our backing," Mom said, pulling out her phone again, but this time to show me an email. "Sent to the property management this morning at 7:45 a.m. They were very understanding. My stomach dropped somewhere near my uncomfortable heels. But my job starts in 3 weeks. You need to figure it out." Dad reached into his jacket pocket and produced an envelope, cream-colored and thick, official. "Since you seem to think money grows on trees, we've prepared something to help you understand the real world." I took the envelope with numb fingers. Inside was a document titled Itemized Child Rearing Expenses Brooks, Elena M. The letterhead was elaborate, almost mocking in its formality. My eyes skimmed the entries. Organic groceries ages 0 to 18, $31,000. Transportation and vehicle wear, $8,400. Administrative overhead for college planning, $3,200. The total at the bottom made my vision blur, $68,400. "Due in 90 days, Mom added, tapping her manicured nail on the paper. "We've consulted with a financial advisor. This is more than fair, considering inflation." "You're joking!" My voice came out strangled. Around us, the celebration continued, caps flying, families embracing. "This is insane." "You can't just check your accounts," Dad said, glancing at his watch. "We've already made the necessary adjustments. The joint account for your expenses, your emergency credit card, all of it. You wanted independence? Congratulations, graduate." My phone was in my hand before I realized I'd pulled it out. The banking app loaded slowly, the university's Wi-Fi struggling under the load of hundreds of families uploading photos. When it finally opened, the numbers stared back at me. Checking €0, savings €0. A new transaction line read, "Transfer to primary account holder, complete balance," Executed 11:15 a.m. The money from Grandma's education trust, I whispered, was always meant to support the family's financial planning, Mom said smoothly. We invested it wisely. The kitchen renovation added $30,000 in home value. My phone buzzed. An email from the Riverton Education Foundation. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Ms. Brooks, we've received notice of a beneficiary change for your final semester scholarship disbursement. Per the authorized family representative's request, funds have been redirected to the primary account. Thank you for your participation in our program. That scholarship was in my name, I said, my voice rising despite myself. You had no right. We had every right. Dad interrupted. Who do you think filled out those applications who drove you to every interview that money was earned by this family's effort? I stood there in my cap and gown, the May breeze suddenly feeling like ice against my skin. My phone buzzed again, the Northview Medical Center HR department, probably about orientation. I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Mom adjusted her purse strap, checking the time. We have reservations at the Whitmore room to celebrate. You're welcome to join us. Of course. Dutch treat. They turned and walked toward the parking lot, Mom's heels clicking against the concrete in that determined rhythm I'd heard my whole life. Dad didn't look back. Other families streamed around me, their joy a stark contrast to the weight crushing my chest. I stood alone in the middle of the emptying quad, my diploma suddenly feeling like a prop in a play I no longer understood. Opening my banking app one more time, I stared at those zeros. In the transaction history, buried between the cleared balance and the scholarship theft, was one more entry I'd missed. 529 Education Fund, account closed by custodian. My college fund, the one they'd shown me statements for since I was 7, promising it would see me through graduate school if I wanted. Gone. The parking lot was nearly empty now. My beat-up Honda Civic sat in the far corner, at least that was still in my name, a small mercy from when I'd bought it with my deli wages. I walked toward it on unsteady legs, my mind racing through the math 3 weeks until work started. No apartment, no money, a $68,000 bill from my own parents. My phone lit up with one final notification as I reached my car. Mobile deposit available, check from Gordon Brooks, $20. Memo graduation gift, $20. After stealing everything, they'd left me with $20. I sat in my driver's seat, engine off, staring at the university grounds where I'd just spent 4 years believing I was building something. Behind me, in a box I'd packed that morning, were my scrubs for Northview, my stethoscope, my clinical reference guides, tools for a future that suddenly felt impossibly out of reach. But as I gripped the steering wheel, something else stirred beneath the panic. They'd made one mistake in their perfect plan they'd taught me to be thorough. Every receipt saved, every document filed, every email archived. 4 years of meticulous records, because Mom always said, documentation is protection. She was right about that. At least. She just never specified protection from whom. The storage unit smelled like dust and abandoned promises. I'd driven here straight from graduation, needing anything that might explain how we'd gotten to this point. Box after box of my childhood sat stacked against the metal walls, things Mom had insisted on keeping for memories, but banished from the house during the last renovation. I pulled down a plastic bin labeled Elena High School and sat cross-legged on the concrete floor. Inside, between yearbooks and dried corsages, was a folder I'd forgotten existed, college planning. My 16-year-old handwriting covered pages of scholarship applications, essay drafts, budgets calculated down to the penny. At the bottom was a printed email from Mom to my guidance counselor. Elena will not need to work during college. We've made adequate provisions. Adequate provisions. I laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. Even at 16, I'd known something was off. The FAFSA forms they'd filed listed our family contribution as 0, despite Dad's contractor business and Mom's real estate sideline. It's all about knowing the system. Dad had winked when I'd questioned it, but I'd worked anyway. Started at Maple and Rye Deli the week after my 16th birthday, telling them I wanted spending money. The truth was simpler. I'd overheard Mom on the phone with her sister. Why should we drain our savings when Elena can contribute character building? You know? The memory crystallized as I found my old pay stubs, carefully saved in a manila envelope. $4.75 an hour, then $5.25, then $6. Weekend shifts that started at 5:30 at Ma. Closing shifts that kept me out until 11 p.m. On school nights, my junior year calculus teacher, Mr. Harrison, had pulled me aside once. "You're falling asleep in class. Elena, everything okay at home?" "Just working a few hours." I'd lied. A few hours. Try 30 a week, 40 during summers. Another box yielded more evidence of the fiction we'd all agreed to live. Report cards with honor roll stamps next to bank statements showing automatic transfers from my checking to theirs for safekeeping. Mom had said, "You don't want to be tempted to waste it." The college acceptance letters I'd celebrated, each one carefully photographed for Mom's Facebook before being filed away where I couldn't access them. The financial aid packages that somehow always needed parental review before I could see the final numbers. My phone buzzed. Jasmine Hale, my study partner from nursing school. "Where did you disappear to? We're all at Murphy's celebrating." I started to type an excuse, then stopped. What would I say that my parents had just presented me with a bill for my childhood? Instead, I dug deeper into the boxes, hunting now with purpose. There, a large manila envelope marked Education Fund in Mom's handwriting. Inside were the quarterly statements for my 5 and 29 plan, each one showing steady growth. The last statement, from just 6 months ago, showed a balance of $47,000, enough for graduate school, they'd promised, enough for a future. But there was something else in the envelope, a form I didn't recognize, dated 3 years ago. Change of investment direction, with my signature at the bottom, except I'd never signed it. I held it up to the light, studying the loops and curves of Elena Brooks written in a hand that tried to mimic mine but pressed too hard on the downstrokes, curved too much on the capital E. My actual signature was right there for comparison, on my work permit from that same year. They weren't even close. More papers. A letter from the Riverton Education Foundation congratulating me on my sophomore year scholarship, $8,000 for exceptional academic achievement while demonstrating financial need. I remembered the application, the essay about overcoming challenges. Mom had edited it, adding details about our struggles that made me uncomfortable. "It's not lying," she'd insisted. "It's presenting our situation strategically." But I'd never seen the check. The award letter listed a direct deposit date, an account number I didn't recognize. In the margins, Mom had penciled notes, "Master bath tile" and "Italian marble special order." My phone rang. Mrs. Beach, my old landlady from the tiny apartment I'd rented sophomore year when the dorms became too expensive, according to my parents. "Elena, dear, I heard through the grapevine about your graduation. Congratulations." Her voice was warm, grandmotherly. "I wanted to check, did you ever get those certified letters that came for you? Your father was very insistent about collecting them, said it was urgent family business." Certified letters? My heart rate spiked when, several times, from banks, the university financial aid office. He'd come by when you were in class, had some paperwork showing he was authorized to sign for you. The authorization form. I remembered it now, mixed in with a dozen other papers they'd had me sign for the FAFSA my freshman year, signing so many documents my hand had cramped, Mom standing over me saying we'd miss the deadline if I read everything. "Mrs. Beach, do you remember which banks? First National, I think, and something called Fairway Lending. Your father mentioned you were consolidating your loans for a better rate." Fairway Lending. I'd never heard of them, never taken loans from them. My federal loans were through the standard servicer, and I'd religiously avoided private loans because the interest rates were predatory. "Thank you," I managed. "That's helpful." After she hung up, I sat surrounded by the archaeology of my own life, each layer revealing new betrayals. The high school job that was supposed to be character building but actually funded their vacations. The college fund that became a kitchen renovation. The scholarships that turned into bathroom tile. And now, apparently, loans I'd never taken. Ms. Tilda Crane, my academic advisor, had tried to warn me once. Senior year. She'd called me into her office. Elena, your financial aid package seems unusual. These changes to your contact information, routing everything through a family email address is everything all right. I defended them. Of course. They were my parents. They were helping me navigate the complex world of college finance. They had my best interests at heart. My phone showed 3:12 p.m. 7 hours since they'd cut me off. 7 hours of freedom. If you could call being broke and betrayed freedom. I started photographing everything, every document, every forged signature, every redirected payment. The storage unit's fluorescent light flickered as I worked, casting shadows that made my childhood papers look like evidence in a crime scene, which, I was beginning to realize, they were. At the bottom of the last box, wrapped in plastic, was my acceptance letter to Midland State. Underneath it, in an envelope I'd never seen before, was another letter. Same letterhead, same date, but different content. A full-ride scholarship offer from the honors program tuition, room, board, books. Based on your exceptional academic record and demonstrated financial need. Declined, apparently, by my authorized family representative. I stared at that letter until the words blurred. 4 years of midnight shifts at the deli. 4 years of choosing between textbooks and meals. 4 years of, we're sacrificing so much for your education when they'd literally turned down free money to keep me dependent. My phone buzzed again. An email from Northview Medical Center. Reminder new employee orientation paperwork due by 5 p.m. Friday. Please confirm your residence address for parking permit. Friday. 5 days to find somewhere to live. Figure out how to survive 3 weeks without money. And somehow start a career while my parents tried to destroy it. I loaded the boxes into my car, every document that mattered now with me instead of in a storage unit they paid for and could access. As I drove away, one thought kept circling. They'd taught me to document everything. Time to see how much they'd documented their own crimes. The Riverton Public Library's computer lab became my war room. Free internet, printer access for 10 cents a page. And most importantly, no one asking questions about the girl in graduation clothes furiously typing at 7:45 p.m. First task access my credit report. The password recovery went to my old email, the one I still controlled. As the report loaded, I held my breath. 3 accounts I recognized: my car loan, my single credit card, and federal student loans. But there, like a cancer metastasizing through my financial life, was a 4th entry: Fairway Lending. Private student loan. Originated 18 months ago. Balance $23,000. The login credentials were saved in my password manager. I'd never created this account, but somehow my browser remembered it. When I accessed it, the disbursement history made my hands shake. Electronic transfers to Riverton Heritage Bank. Account ending in 7749. Not mine. The signature pages showed that same pressed too hard forgery of my name. I screenshot everything, then called Fairway's customer service. 20 minutes on hold. Then, I need to report fraudulent activity on my account. I show here you're not the primary contact, the representative said. Gordon Brooks is listed as the authorized. I hung up. Next, the 529 plan. The Brooks Future Fund. They'd called it at every family dinner where Mom would dramatically calculate how much we're sacrificing for your future. The plan administrator's website required just the account number and my social security number. When I logged in, the transaction history read like a crime novel. January $15,000 withdrawal for qualified education expenses. The same month, Mom's Facebook had featured her New Year, New Kitchen renovation photos. March $12,000 withdrawal. Dad's truck had gotten that expensive lift kit and custom paint job around then. September, last year $20,000 withdrawal. The vacation to Cabo, they'd said, was a business conference. Every withdrawal coded as education expenses, requiring no documentation because the account owner, Gordon Brooks, had certified they were legitimate. The IRS would never know unless audited. And who audits a middle-class family using a college fund for college, except the money had never touched my tuition? I pulled up my student account history from Midland State's portal. Every semester showed the same pattern: federal loans and work study covering everything after the mysterious family contribution of zero. My phone buzzed. Mom had posted on Facebook, "Tough love is still love. Sometimes children need to learn gratitude the hard way. Proud of the woman we've raised, even if she doesn't appreciate it yet." Parenting. Life lessons. Graduation. Already 43 likes. Her real estate colleagues commenting with hearts and, "You're such a good mother," and "She'll thank you someday." I typed a comment. "Is that what you call stealing $47,000 from my college fund? Delete." Not yet. Not without proof they couldn't deny. The Riverton Education Foundation website had a recipient portal. My login still worked, though the email address had been changed to Marla, Family Office Edgemail, com. $8,000 in my sophomore year, $5,000 junior year, $3,000 this final semester distributed just last week. According to the transaction history, the bank account it went to, that same Riverton Heritage account ending in 7749. I opened a new browser tab and searched for property records. Our house, or rather, their house, had indeed been renovated extensively. Permits pulled for $70,000 in improvements over the past 3 years. Contractor Gordon Brooks Construction. He'd paid himself for the work, using my money. The itemized bill they'd given me started making 6 cents. They weren't really expecting me to pay them back for raising me. This was intimidation, a preemptive strike to keep me from questioning where my money had gone. Make me feel guilty. Make me feel indebted. Make me feel like the ungrateful child they'd painted me as. My academic email still worked. I composed a message to Ms. Tilda Crane. Need urgent help. Parents seem to have committed financial aid fraud. Can we meet tomorrow? Her response came within minutes. My office, 8 a.m. Bring everything. Next email. To the Financial Aid Office. Request for complete records of all aid applications, disbursements, and account changes. 2019-2024. FERPA formal records request attached. The library was closing. As I gathered my printed evidence, 43 pages, and counting the security guard gave me a sympathetic look. "Everything okay, miss?" "Getting better," I said, meaning it. Outside. My car had a parking ticket, because of course it did, but tucked under the windshield wiper was also a note. "Elena saw your mom's FB post. Have a couch you can crash on. No questions asked." Jasmine! I sat in my driver's seat and finally let myself cry. Not from despair, but from rage and relief. Every document I'd found was another bar in the cage they'd built around me, but also another piece of evidence for my key. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Brooks. This is Karen Nguyen from Northview Medical Center HR. We received a concerning email about your financial stability and fitness for employment. We need to discuss your onboarding status." My stomach dropped. "An email from whom?" "It was sent from a Gordon Brooks, claiming to be your father. He suggested you have a history of financial irresponsibility and potential fraud. We take such allegations seriously. They'd tried to destroy my job, the one thing I'd earned completely on my own, and they'd tried to take that too. Ms. Nguyen, I need to inform you that my parents are currently engaged in financial fraud against me, and this email is retaliation. I can provide documentation. Miss Brooks, I'm going to stop you there. We've actually received similar calls about 2 other new graduates this year. Parents trying to sabotage job offers. It's more common than you'd think." Her voice softened. "Send me what documentation you can. We'll hold your position. But I need something by Monday morning showing this is a family dispute and not a legitimate concern." Monday. 4 days. "You'll have it," I promised. After she hung up, I looked at the growing pile of evidence beside me. Bank statements, Forged signatures, redirected funds, fraudulent loans. Each document a thread in the web they'd woven, thinking I'd never be able to untangle it. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd raised me to be thorough, to document everything, to never trust without verifying. They'd created their own worst enemy, someone with their training, but none of their greed. I started the car and headed to Jasmine's apartment. Tomorrow, Ms. Crane. Then a lawyer. Then whatever it took to reclaim not just my money, but my name. Mom's Facebook post had gained another 20 likes while I was driving. The last comment was from my grandmother's sister, Aunt Helen. Marla, this doesn't sound like the Elena I know. And what happened to my sister's education trust? She'd be rolling in her grave. Mom hadn't responded to that one. I pulled into Jasmine's complex at 11:20 p.m., my entire financial life in boxes in my back seat. Through the lit windows above, I could see my friend waiting. 2 cups of tea already steaming on her coffee table. Time to stop playing defense. Jasmine's apartment smelled like coffee and determination at 7:15 a.m. She'd been up with me since 5, helping me organize documents into labeled folders while her cat, Marcus, supervised from his perch on the scanner. "This one's smoking gun material," she said, holding up the forged 529 withdrawal form. "Your real signature is nothing like this." "Add it to pile 3, I said, highlighting another line on the Fairway lending statement. "That's the forensic evidence stack." My phone showed 12 missed calls from Mom, 6 from Dad, and a series of increasingly aggressive texts. The last one, from Dad at 6:42 a.m. "You're being dramatic. Come home and we'll discuss this like adults." I showed it to Jasmine. "Like adults who steal from their children." "Block them," she said, "at least until you get legal help." At 8 sharp, I was in Ms. Tilda Crane's office at Midland State. She looked exactly the same as she had during our monthly advising sessions, silver hair in a neat bun, reading glasses on a chain, expression that could shift from grandmotherly to steel in seconds. "Show me everything," she said. For 40 minutes, I laid out the evidence, the redirected scholarships, the drained 529, the fraudulent loan, the forged signatures. She took notes in her precise handwriting, occasionally making sharp intake of breath. "Elena," she finally said, removing her glasses, "this is criminal fraud, federal crimes, some of it. The 529 fraud alone could trigger IRS penalties of up to 50%, plus potential criminal charges. I just want my money back," I said, "and to start my job without them sabotaging it." She picked up her phone. "Evan Tilda Crane. I have a former student who needs your particular expertise. How soon can you see us?" 20 minutes later. We were in the law offices of Porter and Lane, a firm in downtown Riverton that occupied the top floor of a restored bank building. Evan Rourke looked younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of intentional dishevelment that suggested he'd been working all night on something else. "Ms. Crane says your parents are trying to collect childhood expenses while simultaneously stealing your education funds." He leaned forward, interested. "That's a new one." I spread out the documents again. This time, I noticed details I'd missed: how the fraudulent loan application listed my income as 3 times what it actually was, how the 529 withdrawals coincided with permits pulled for home improvements. Evan whistled low. "They're not just criminals, they're sloppy criminals." He pulled up something on his computer. "Gordon Brooks Construction, LLC, registered to your father. Gross receipts last year of $340,000. Your mother, Marla Brooks, licensed realtor with Pinnacle Properties. Sold 11 homes last year. Combined income well into 6 figures. And they claimed poverty on my FAFSA, which is federal fraud." He made notes on a legal pad. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we secure your immediate needs housing, income protection, identity monitoring. Second, we send a demand letter that will make them soil themselves. Third, if they don't comply, we file both civil suits and criminal complaints." "What about the bill they gave me?" "The $68,000. He actually laughed. "Ohio law is clear. Parents have no right to retroactive child support from adult children absent a prior agreement or unusual circumstances. That document is toilet paper with delusions of grandeur. He pulled up a template on his screen. But we'll use it against them. Shows consciousness of guilt, attempting to create a paper trail to justify their theft. My phone buzzed. Mrs. Beach. Dear, your father just came by asking if you'd stayed here last night. I told him I hadn't seen you. He seemed agitated. Evan noticed my expression. They're looking for you. Apparently? Good. Let them sweat. He turned to Ms. Crane. Can the university provide any documentation about the scholarship redirections? Already requested, she said. The foundation is horrified. They're conducting an internal audit of all family-directed disbursement changes. Evan's assistant knocked and entered. Mr. Rourke, you wanted the Brooks credit report. He scanned it quickly, then turned the screen toward me. Your parents have a home equity line of credit for $70,000, maxed out. Credit cards totaling $40,000, near limits. They're leveraged to their eyeballs. But Dad's business is probably cash poor. Construction often is. And your mother's real estate income is commission-based. Inconsistent. He pulled up property records. They're 3 months behind on property taxes. Filed for an extension last year. The picture crystallized. They hadn't just stolen from me because they were greedy. They were desperate. Every dollar of my education funds had gone to maintaining a lifestyle they couldn't afford. This changes our strategy, Evan said. They need this to go away quickly and quietly. Financial crimes plus professional licensing issues, your mother could lose her real estate license, your father could lose bonding for his construction business. So we have leverage. We have a cannon aimed at their glass house. He began typing rapidly. The demand letter will give them 72 hours to return all funds or face immediate legal action. We'll include the criminal referrals we're prepared to file wire fraud for the electronic transfers, mail fraud for the redirected disbursements, identity theft for the forged signatures, tax fraud for the 529 misuse. Ms. Crane's phone rang. She listened, then handed it to me. The foundation director. Miss Brooks, we've found irregularities going back 3 years. Over $16,000 in scholarships redirected to an unauthorized account. We're prepared to file a police report and cooperate fully with any investigation. I thanked him and handed the phone back. Evan was printing documents. Sign here for representation, he said. My retainer is usually $5,000, but we'll work on contingency given the circumstances. I get 30% of whatever we recover. Nothing if we don't win. I signed. What choice did I have? Now, he said, standing. Let's go secure that fraudulent loan documentation before they think to destroy evidence. We drove to Fairway Lending's local office. Evan on the phone the entire way. Yes, Federal Trade Commission. I need to report identity theft and fraudulent loan origination. Yes, I'll hold. The Fairway office manager went pale when Evan explained the situation. Within an hour, we had full documentation including the email address used to create the account Dad's, the IP addresses of every login matching our home network, and security camera footage of Dad signing documents. We had no idea, the manager kept saying. He had power of attorney paperwork. Forged, Evan said flatly. My client never granted POA. Back at the law office, my phone had 32 new messages. I didn't read them. Instead, I focused on Evan's assistant preparing the demand package, a beautiful bomb of legal language and documented evidence. One more thing, Evan said. That job at Northview, we're sending them a formal notice that any negative information from your parents constitutes tortious interference with contract and defamation. Should shut that down fast. At 4:30 p.m., as I sat in Jasmine's apartment eating my first meal of the day, an email arrived from Evan. Demand letter delivered by process server at 4:21 p.m. Your father turned white. Your mother started screaming about ungrateful children. The server recorded it all. As instructed, clock starts now. 72 hours, 3 days for them to decide between returning my money or facing destruction. My phone rang. Unknown number. You've made a terrible mistake. Mom's voice, cold and controlled. We're your parents. We have rights. You have the right to an attorney, I said, and hung up. For the first time in 4 days. I smiled. The demand letter hit them like a financial meteor. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Evan's office had received 3 voicemails from different lawyers, all claiming to represent Marla and Gordon Brooks, all wanting to discuss resolution. They're shopping for an attorney who'll take their case, Evan explained over the phone. That's panic behavior. Good. But my parents weren't going down without a fight. At 11:15 a.m., I received a notification. You've been served. A courier stood at Jasmine's door with papers. My parents were suing me in small claims court for $68,400 in unpaid family debts and breach of implied contract. This is actually perfect, Evan said when I called him, hyperventilating. They've put their fraudulent claim into the legal system. Now we can countersue and consolidate everything into superior court where real discovery happens. Discovery, the legal equivalent of turning over rocks to see what crawls out. That afternoon, the real retaliation began. An email forwarded from Karen Nguyen at Northview. Ms. Brooks, I've now received 6 emails from your father describing alleged mental health issues, financial crimes, and drug abuse. While we don't credit these claims, I need you to understand the seriousness of this harassment. Dad had also called the Ohio Board of Nursing, claiming I'd cheated on my licensing exam. The board opened a formal investigation standard procedure for any complaint, no matter how baseless. Document everything, Evan instructed. Every email, every call, every interaction. We're adding harassment and defamation to our counterclaims. But the worst came at 6:42 p.m. Mom posted in the Riverton Community Facebook group, seeking prayers for our family. Our daughter, who we sacrificed everything to put through nursing school, has turned on us with false accusations and lawyers. We're heartbroken but standing strong. Sometimes mental illness manifests after college stress. We just want her to get help. Within an hour, 247 reactions, 89 comments. People I'd grown up with, worked with at the deli, studied alongside, all reading that I was mentally ill, ungrateful, possibly dangerous. Jasmine held my phone away from me. Don't read the comments. Don't engage. She's destroying my reputation. She's destroying her own, Jasmine corrected, pulling up her laptop. Look. Aunt Helen had commented, Marla, this is inappropriate. If Elena needs help, Facebook isn't the place. And you still haven't answered about my sister's education trust. 3 former classmates had privately messaged me offering support, saying my mom's post seemed off. The owner of Maple and Rye Deli wrote, Elena worked here 4 years. Most responsible kid I ever employed. This doesn't add up. At 8 p.m., Evan called with an update. Your parents just hired Steinberg and Associates, bottom feeders who take unwinnable cases for high retainers. They've responded to our demand with a counteroffer, which is, drop all claims, sign an NDA, and they'll withdraw the small claims suit. Oh, and you apologize publicly for misunderstanding the family's financial arrangements. Absolutely not. Good, because I've been doing more digging. Your father's construction company. He's been using it to launder the stolen education funds, claiming them as business expenses, paying himself for work on his own home. That's tax fraud on top of everything else. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Mom. Dad doesn't know I'm texting you. Please come home. We can work this out. I know you found the documents. We can explain everything. Family doesn't do this to each other. I showed it to Evan the next morning. She's trying to get you alone, probably recording, to create evidence of you saying something they can use. He printed the text. Or worse, trying to guilt you into dropping this. That afternoon, they escalated again. A process server arrived at Northview Medical Center with papers for the HR department my parents were suing the hospital for negligent hiring and enabling a mentally unstable individual to endanger patients. Karen Nguyen called me directly. Elena, this is now beyond harassment. Our legal department is involved. We're considering a restraining order against your parents. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. We've seen parental sabotage before, but never this extreme. Legal wants to know if you'd support us filing charges for tortious interference. Yes, absolutely. The war was spreading, and my parents were burning every bridge they crossed. But they'd made a crucial error. They'd involved a hospital's legal department. Northview had deeper pockets and less patience than I did. That evening, Evan convened a war council at his office. Ms. Crane was there, along with a representative from the university's legal team and, surprisingly, a prosecutor from the county attorney's office. The Riverton Education Foundation has filed a formal criminal complaint. The prosecutor, Ann Jeffries, explained, $16,000 in stolen scholarship funds is felony theft. We're opening an investigation. There's more, the university lawyer added. We've found 4 other instances of family representatives redirecting funds in the last 5 years. Your parents might have been running this scheme with other families. My stomach turned. They were stealing from other students, possibly teaching other parents how to do it. Your mother's real estate office computer might have evidence she does taxes and financial planning on the side. Off the books. Evan pulled up his laptop. Speaking of which, the IRS Criminal Division returned my call. They're very interested in the 529 fund abuse. Penalties alone could exceed $30,000, plus potential criminal charges for tax evasion. So what happens now? I asked. Now, Evan said. We call their bluff. Tomorrow is the deadline for the demand letter. They've refused to comply. So we file everything civil suit for conversion, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, criminal complaints for identity theft, wire fraud, tax fraud, professional complaints against both their licenses, and we do it publicly, on the court docket, where their clients and colleagues will see it. Unless, I heard the implied alternative in his voice, unless they want to settle tonight, full restitution plus damages, or we unleash hell tomorrow at 9 a.m. at 11:47 p.m. Evan's phone rang. Steinberg, their attorney. My clients are prepared to discuss terms, he said over speaker, but they want a meeting, in person, with Elena present. Absolutely not, Evan started, but I interrupted. I'll do it, but it's recorded, in your office, with security present. Steinberg hesitated. 1 hour. Tomorrow. 7 a.m. After he hung up, Evan looked at me. You don't have to face them. Yes, I do. They need to see that I'm not backing down, that their little girl learned from the best how to document everything, how to fight dirty, and how to win. Ms. Crane squeezed my shoulder. Your grandmother would be proud. I thought about the trust fund meant for my education, now part of my parents' kitchen backsplash. She would want justice. Then let's get it, Evan said, already planning tomorrow's ambush. Wear something professional. Let them see the woman they created, the one who's about to destroy them with their own weapons. Sleep was impossible. At 3:17 a.m., I gave up and sat at Jasmine's kitchen table, reviewing every document one more time. The nursing pin from my graduation ceremony sat beside my coffee cup, the only thing from that day that still felt real. My phone lit up with another text from Mom. Elena, please. Your father is having chest pains from the stress. Is this what you want to kill your own father? I screenshotted and forwarded it to Evan. His response was immediate despite the hour. Manipulation and emotional blackmail. Document but don't respond. At 5:30 a.m., I stood in front of Jasmine's bathroom mirror, applying concealer under my eyes. The woman staring back looked older than 26. Harder. Good. Let them see what their betrayal had created. You don't have to do this, Jasmine said from the doorway, already dressed for her shift at the hospital. Yes, I do. I smoothed my hair back into the same bun I'd worn to graduation. They taught me to never show weakness in a negotiation. The drive to Porter and Lane took 12 minutes. I spent them listening to the recording app Evan had instructed me to download, testing it 3 times. Ohio was a one-party consent state. I could record everything legally. Evan met me in the lobby at 6:45 a.m., coffee in hand. "They're already here. Conference room 3. Remember, you don't have to speak at all if you don't want to." "I want to." The conference room smelled like fear masked with expensive cologne. Dad sat rigid in his contractor's best blazer, Mom beside him in the same outfit she wore for real estate showings. Their lawyer, Steinberg, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Elena," Mom's voice cracked. "Sweetheart, don't." I sat down across from them, placing my folder of documents on the table. "You lost the right to call me that when you stole my future." "We never stole anything," Dad said. "We invested in the family's needs. You benefited from those improvements to the house you're 3 months behind on in property taxes." I pulled out the records Evan had found. The house with a maxed-out equity line? That house, Mom's face flushed. "How dare you? How dare I? You stole $47,000 from my education fund, $16,000 in scholarships, took out $23,000 in fraudulent loans in my name, and then had the audacity to bill me for my childhood." Steinberg cleared his throat. "My clients are prepared to offer a settlement. They'll withdraw the small claims suit if you drop all allegations." Evan laughed. "That's not a settlement. That's surrender without restitution. My client is owed $86,000 minimum, plus damages for defamation, tortious interference, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "We don't have that kind of money," Dad said flatly. "Sell the house," I said. "The one you renovated with my college fund." The room went silent. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. "You don't understand," she said. "We were drowning. The business was failing. The market was down. We had to. You had to. You had to steal from your daughter instead of downsizing, instead of getting second jobs like I did at 16, instead of living within your means. We gave you everything." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Private tutors, dance lessons, summer camps. I never asked for any of that. I asked for honesty. For parents who wouldn't forge my signature and destroy my credit." Evan slid a paper across the table. "Criminal complaints ready to file at 9 a.m. Wire fraud, identity theft, tax evasion. The IRS is particularly interested in the 529 fund violations." Steinberg went pale. "The IRS, 50% penalties on improper distributions, plus interest, plus potential criminal charges." Evan smiled coldly. "Your clients could face federal prison time." Mom started crying. Real tears, not the performative ones she used at closings. "Elena, please, we're your parents." "No, parents protect their children. You sacrificed me to maintain your image." My phone buzzed. A text from Kara Nguyen, Board of Nursing called. "Your father withdrew his complaint after our legal department contacted him. You're cleared." I showed it to the room. "Still think you can destroy my career?" Dad's face had gone from red to ash gray. "What do you want?" "Everything you stole, plus $30,000 in damages. The house sale should cover it." "That's extortion," Steinberg protested. "That's justice," Evan corrected. "And it's a gift. The alternative is criminal prosecution, professional license revocation, and public humiliation." I pulled out my final document, a printout of Mom's Facebook post about my mental illness. $63,000, transferred to a trust account Evan will manage until I'm established at Northview. "You'll sign a statement admitting the fraudulent loan was taken without my knowledge, and you'll post a public retraction of your lies about my mental health. Or," Mom's voice was barely a whisper, "or at 9 a.m. we file everything. Criminal charges, civil suits, professional complaints. Your real estate colleagues will know you're a thief. Dad's construction bonds will be revoked. You'll lose everything anyway, but publicly, humiliatingly, and possibly from a federal prison cell." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked at Steinberg. Steinberg looked at his watch, 7:41 a.m. "We need time to consider." Steinberg began. "You have until 8:59 a.m., Evan said. 1 minute before we file." We stood to leave. As I reached the door, Mom called out, "Elena, wait." I turned. Your grandmother, she said desperately. She would want family to stay together. I thought of Grandma's education trust, meant to secure my future, now part of their kitchen renovation. Grandma believed in consequences. She also believed in documentation. Guess which traits I inherited? In the hallway, my legs nearly gave out. Evan steadied me. You did amazing. They're going to cave, I said, sure of it now. They're too proud to let everyone know what they did. At 8:37 a.m., Steinberg called. My clients agree to all terms. By noon, the papers were signed. By 3 p.m., the house was listed. By 5 p.m., the fraudulent loan documents were corrected with the lender, clearing my credit. That evening, I sat in Jasmine's apartment holding a certified check for the first installment $20,000 from their emergency fund, the rest to come from the house sale. Mom had posted her retraction an hour ago. I need to apologize for my previous post. Elena is not mentally ill. Family disputes should remain private. I was wrong to involve the community. Already. Aunt Helen had commented, "What about my sister's trust fund? Marla." I turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I'd start my new job at Northview with a clean record and financial security. Tonight, I'd sleep for the first time in a week. But first, I had one more task. I opened my laptop and began typing, Ms. Jeffries, County Prosecutor's Office. As discussed, I'm formally requesting you proceed with criminal charges for the scholarship theft. Some things can't be fixed with money alone. Signed, Elena Brooks. They wanted to play family fine, but family doesn't steal, lie, and destroy. They taught me that actions have consequences. Time they learned it too. The courtroom at Riverton County Superior Court was smaller than I'd imagined. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights that hummed slightly, and the lingering smell of floor wax. It was 9:23 a.m. on a Thursday, 6 weeks after that settlement conference, and everything had changed. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table. They were still pursuing their child-rearing expenses claim. Despite everything, they'd hired a new lawyer, Marcus Conway, known for taking desperate cases. Mom wore her court best, a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dad looked deflated, his contractor's tan fading into gray exhaustion. All rise for the Honorable Judge Miriam O'Keefe presiding. Judge O'Keefe looked exactly like her reputation. Sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, silver hair pulled back severely, expression that suggested she'd seen every scam attempted in her courtroom. We're here for Brooks v. Brooks, case number 2024 CV0847. She looked at Conway. Counselor, you're seeking $68,000 in child-rearing reimbursement. Proceed. Conway stood, straightening his discount suit. Your Honor, my clients sacrificed everything for their daughter's success. Private tutoring, dance lessons, educational opportunities all documented here. He held up their infamous itemized bill. Now that she's successful, they simply ask for recognition of their investment. Investment, Judge O'Keefe repeated flatly. Continue. For 20 minutes, Conway painted my parents as martyrs. The kitchen renovation was to provide a better study environment. The vacations were educational family bonding. The redirected scholarships were family financial planning with implied consent. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Dad stared at the table. Your Honor, Conway concluded, parenthood shouldn't be a one-way street of sacrifice. Mr. Rourke, Judge O'Keefe turned to Evan. Your response. Evan stood slowly, letting the silence build. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of systematic financial fraud perpetrated by the plaintiffs against their daughter. Objection. Conway shot up. That's not relevant to— It's entirely relevant. Judge O'Keefe cut him off. Proceed. Mr. Rourke. Evan walked to his presentation board, pulling out enlarged copies of documents. Exhibit A, the 529 Education Fund established by Elena's grandmother, valued at $47,000. Here are the withdrawal records, each one coded as Qualified Education Expense. He placed photos next to them. Here's what those education expenses actually bought: a kitchen renovation, a vacation to Cabo San Lucas, a lifted truck with custom paint. Conway shifted nervously. Mom's tissue dabbing intensified. Exhibit B: scholarship funds totaling $16,000, redirected to an account controlled by the plaintiffs. The Riverton Education Foundation has provided these records showing email changes initiated by Marla Brooks, impersonating her daughter. We had permission, Mom started. You're not recognized to speak, Mrs. Brooks, Judge O'Keefe said sharply. Evan continued, methodical and devastating. Exhibit C: a private loan for $23,000, taken in Elena's name. Here's the signature page, and here's a forensic handwriting analysis showing the signature is forged. He placed a recorder on the defense table. Exhibit D: a legally recorded conversation where Mrs. Brooks admits to taking her daughter's money. Mom's voice filled the courtroom. Of course we used Elena's college fund for the house. It's the family home. She benefited from it. She can pay us back when she's a doctor or whatever. Nurse, I said quietly. I'm a nurse. Judge O'Keefe looked at me for the first time, her expression softening slightly. Evan wasn't done. Exhibit E: emails sent by Gordon Brooks to Elena's employer, attempting to sabotage her employment by claiming mental illness and financial irresponsibility. He placed printed emails on the board, highlighting passages. Quote, our daughter has a history of delusions and shouldn't be trusted with patient care. This was sent 3 days after Elena requested return of her stolen funds. And finally, Evan said, pulling out a thick folder, criminal complaints filed with the county prosecutor's office, the IRS, and the Ohio Department of Commerce. The plaintiffs aren't victims seeking reimbursement. They're perpetrators of financial crimes trying to silence their victim with intimidation. Conway stood. Your Honor, these are family disputes that— Mr. Conway, Judge O'Keefe interrupted. Did your clients disclose these pending criminal investigations when they retained you? Conway's silence was answer enough. I'd like to call Elena Brooks to testify, Evan said. I walked to the witness stand, my nursing pin on my lapel catching the harsh light. After being sworn in, Evan asked me to describe my college years. I worked 30 to 40 hours a week at a deli while maintaining a 3.8 GPA, I said, looking directly at my parents. I chose nursing because I wanted to help people. Every semester, my parents showed me statements for my education fund, promising it would cover graduate school. Every semester, they were stealing it. How did you discover the theft? They handed me a bill for my childhood at graduation, while threatening me with homelessness and financial ruin. They accidentally revealed they'd been living off my education funds for years. What impact has this had on your life? I thought about the nights on Jasmine's couch, the humiliation of having my mental health questioned publicly, the fear that everything I'd worked for would disappear. They didn't just steal money, they stole my sense of security, my trust in family, my reputation in the community. They tried to destroy my career before it started because I dared to ask for what was mine. Conway's cross-examination was brief and desperate. Didn't your parents provide for you growing up? They provided the legal minimum while stealing funds specifically designated for my education? But you had dance lessons, tutoring, paid for with my grandmother's money, which they told me was coming from their sacrifices. Judge O'Keefe had heard enough. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom fell silent. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang distantly. In my 23 years on the bench, Judge O'Keefe began, I've seen parents fail their children in countless ways. But this calculated financial predation disguised as parenting is particularly repugnant. Mom gasped. Dad finally looked up. The plaintiff's claim for child-rearing expenses is denied in full. Parents have a legal and moral obligation to support their minor children without expectation of repayment. Furthermore, attempting to retroactively bill an adult child while simultaneously stealing their education funds demonstrates a spectacular level of legal ignorance and moral bankruptcy. She turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, you've committed multiple felonies, wire fraud, identity theft, conversion of trust funds. The only reason you're not in handcuffs is prosecutorial discretion, and your daughter's reluctance to see you imprisoned. Your Honor, Conway started. I'm not finished. I'm ordering full restitution of all stolen funds plus interest $86,000. Additionally, $30,000 in punitive damages for the intentional infliction of emotional distress and tortious interference with employment. She looked at Evan. Mr. Rourke, draft an order. I want specific payment schedules and consequences for non-compliance. Then, unexpectedly, she looked back at me. Ms. Brooks, you showed remarkable strength and intelligence in documenting these crimes. Your grandmother would indeed be proud. This court wishes you success in your nursing career. Furthermore, she continued, turning back to my parents, I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. No contact with Elena Brooks except through legal counsel. No posts about her on social media. No contact with her employer. Violation will result in immediate incarceration. She raised her gavel. The house sale proceeds will go directly to a court-controlled account for distribution to Elena Brooks. Any attempt to circumvent this order will result in criminal contempt charges. The gavel fell with a crack that echoed through the room. Mom collapsed into her chair, sobbing real tears this time. Dad stared at the table, looking every one of his 58 years. Conway was already packing his briefcase, probably calculating how to get paid from clients heading toward bankruptcy. As I stood to leave, Mom called out desperately, Elena, please, we're still your parents. I turned at the courtroom door. No, parents don't steal from their children. Parents don't destroy what they're supposed to protect. You're just two people who happened to raise me, and you taught me well, always get everything in writing, always keep records, and always protect yourself. Thanks for the lessons. The courthouse steps felt different walking down than they had coming up. The September air carried the first hint of fall, and I stood there for a moment, letting it wash over me. Behind me, the heavy doors opened again, my parents and Conway, moving quickly toward the parking garage, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Evan stood beside me, briefcase in hand. The court will disperse funds within 10 business days. First payment of $60,000 from the house sale, which closed yesterday. The remaining $56,000 will come from wage garnishments and asset liquidation. They actually sold the house, had to. Judge O'Keefe's order left no room for negotiation. He pulled out his phone, showing me the real estate listing marked sold. Under market value for a quick sale. They're moving to a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside Commons. The same complex where they'd once mocked a client for poor life choices. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed. Kara Nguyen from Northview. Saw the news coverage. Your shift tomorrow is still 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Welcome to the team. Officially drama-free. News coverage. Right. The Riverton Gazette had sent a reporter after getting wind of the case from the public docket. Local parents sue daughter for childhood expenses. Lose everything would probably be tomorrow's headline. What happens to them now? I asked Evan, surprising myself by caring. The IRS will pursue the 529 penalties. The prosecutor's office is still deciding whether to file criminal charges that's independent of our civil victory. Your mother's real estate license is under review by the state board. Your father's construction bonds are already frozen. They destroyed themselves trying to destroy me. There was no satisfaction in it, just a hollow feeling where family used to live. At 3:47 p.m., I walked into Northview Medical Center for my first official shift orientation. The building hummed with purpose, doctors rushing between rooms, families in waiting areas, the controlled chaos of helping people heal. My supervisor, Janet Morrison, met me at the nurses' station. Brooks, Wright heard you had some family drama. You good? I'm exactly where I want to be, I said, meaning it. She handed me my ID badge, my access cards, my assignment sheet. Pediatric ICU to start. Hope you're ready to work. For the first time in months, I was thinking about something other than lawyers and theft and betrayal. A 6-year-old with pneumonia needed monitoring. A premature baby required specialized care. Real problems that mattered, not manufactured invoice for being born. During my break at 11:23 p.m., I sat in the hospital cafeteria with a cup of terrible coffee and checked my phone. 43 messages I didn't read, but one stood out. Aunt Helen. Elena, your grandmother left me something for you, separate from the trust. She knew your parents had problems with money. It's a letter and a small savings bond she kept in my name. Come by when you're ready. I'd go tomorrow. Tonight was for new beginnings. The next morning, after my shift, I drove to Aunt Helen's small house on Maple Street. She looked like Grandma's same sharp eyes, same careful way of moving. She handed me an envelope, yellowed with age. Inside, Grandma's handwriting. Elena, if you're reading this, it means I was right to worry. Your parents love you, but they love themselves more. The bond is only $5,000, not enough to change your life, but enough to remind you that someone saw who you really were. Use it for something that matters. Don't let them make you hard. Love, Grandma. The bond was dated 15 years ago, when I was 11. She'd known even then. I deposited it that afternoon into a new account at a new bank, one my parents had never touched. The teller congratulated me on my court victory. Apparently everyone in Riverton knew the story now. 3 days later, a certified check arrived from the court, $60,000, the first installment of my restitution. I stared at it for a long time. This money had been meant for my education, then stolen for granite countertops and beach vacations. Now it was back, but it carried the weight of everything broken to retrieve it. I did something my parents would never understand. I drove to the Riverton Community Foundation and walked into their offices. I'd like to establish a scholarship, I told the director, for students whose families have financially exploited them. Full ride, including living expenses. No family financial information required. That's unusually specific. There are more of us than you'd think. Kids whose parents steal their identities, drain their college funds, take out loans in their names. The system assumes parents act in their children's best interests. When they don't, those kids have nowhere to turn. We set it up that afternoon. The Elena Brooks Independent Scholarship, funded with $30,000. The first recipient would be chosen next spring. That evening, I found myself parked outside my old house, their old house. A young couple was moving in, laughing as they carried boxes. The kitchen window was lit, showing glimpses of those granite countertops bought with my future. My phone rang, an unknown number. You destroyed us. Mom's voice, hollow and defeated. We're facing federal charges. Did you know that federal prison? For trying to provide you a good life. You destroyed yourselves, I said calmly. I just refused to be collateral damage. We're your parents. No, you're criminals who happened to raise me. And you did teach me valuable lessons: how to document everything, how to recognize fraud, how to protect myself from people who would steal my future while calling it love. I hung up and blocked the number. Tomorrow, I had a 12-hour shift in the PICU. Real work, real purpose, real life. As I drove away, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the uncertain graduate from 4 months ago. She was someone who'd been tested by betrayal and emerged diamond hard but not bitter. Someone who knew the price of trust and the value of evidence. At my new apartment, small but mine, paid for with my own earned money, I hung my nursing degree on the wall next to Grandma's letter. Below them, I placed the court judgment, not as a trophy but as a reminder. The itemized bill for my childhood, I kept that too, framed in the bathroom. Every morning when I brushed my teeth, I saw it there, $68,000 of parental delusion. The toilet paper it wasn't worth was right beside it. My phone buzzed one last time that night. Jasmine, proud of you. Drinks tomorrow after your shift. Absolutely, I texted back. I sat at my kitchen table, bought secondhand, but honestly mine, and opened my laptop. The nursing certification study guide filled the screen. RN exam in 3 months. Then maybe nurse practitioner someday. Paid for with money that actually belonged to me. Outside, Riverton settled into sleep. Somewhere across town, my parents were learning what it really meant to pay for their choices. And here, in a small apartment that smelled like new paint and possibility. I was finally free. They'd tried to present me with a bill for being born, for being raised, for existing in their world. The court had returned it marked insufficient funds, not in my account, but in their hearts where love should have been. As for me, I was paid in full. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you made it this far, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share your thoughts about what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything, and I'll see you in the next story.